So today we are lucky to have Lesa McPeak, the Web Services Manager for the University Marketing and Communications team. She's going to give us a training on how to write descriptive alternative text. Lesa is kind of the digital accessibility expert go-to for the university and helps manage a lot of the digital accessibility um, website and does a number of other trainings as well. So thanks for joining us, Lesa, and I'll just let you go ahead and jump in.
Okay, now let's see if I can figure out how to share my screen. On the screen that I just minimized so I couldn't. Let's see, where am I? Can you see the full slides?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to talk about alt text. So fun. So we're going to do this in two parts. We're going to talk about alternative text and then the types of images. And so on alternative text, we're going to talk about actual alternative text, it being an art and not a science, providing an equal experience. Context is everything, and what assistive technology does with alt text, our accessibility checkers and best practices. And then we're going to talk about the types of images, the decorative images, the linked images, the logos, the using alt text and captions in conjunction, and complex images, which are images with text, flyers, charts, graphs, diagrams, maps, and also images with motion and social media. Some resources for you guys. The digital accessibility website, the core concepts for images, the assessment to be taken yearly, and the location to ask any questions you have about accessibility. Please feel free to email us with questions. And I'm putting those links in the chat right now. And then, so we're going to start off by talking about the alternative text, how it's an art, not a science when writing an alternative text. You want to provide an equal experience for everyone. Context and how you are using that image is everything. Assistive technology, accessibility checkers, and best practices. So I will refer most likely to alternative text as alt text. I probably did slip back into using alt text. It's the abbreviation for alternative text, but that is what I mean by alt text, is the alternative text for that, for an image. Alternative text is a textual substitute for an image that conveys its content or function. As content, it is a description of an image as it relates to the surrounding content. And as a function, it is a description of the image's purpose, what it will do, or where it will go, such as for a linked image. Writing an alt text is an art, it's not a science. Writing alt text isn't so much as right or wrong, it's more of a scale of quality as poor to excellent. Whether the alt text is of poor quality or excellent quality is subjective, so there is no right or wrong answer for the writing an alt text. It is on a scale of poor to excellent. Poor quality alt text is when there isn't an equal experience happening for users. This happens when the alt text includes information not in the image or surrounding text, and it does not provide enough information. This imbalance of information prevents everyone from getting the same information. With accessibility and all the guidelines that we have, we are trying to provide an equal experience. And we're providing equal information to everyone. The alt text is providing equal information to everyone. It is important to note that do not provide information in the alt text that isn't there in the image, and do not exclude information that everyone should read by not including that in the alt text. Here is an example of equal experience. It is a card with an image, a linked heading, and text. the image on the left is missing the card on the left is missing the image, and you can see the alternative text for that image, which says an aerial view of a green forest landscape with winding rivers. And then it proceeds on to the heading for the link, which is nature, and then a description of where the destination will be. On the right is that image. It is an overview, a high up look down onto a green forested landscape with winding rivers. So that is an equal experience visually and textually. Those are the same. And that's what we are hoping for by providing the alt text, is that we are representing the image as text. But context is everything. What to write for the alt text depends on how the image is being used and its surrounding content. For example, if this photo, sorry, I'm going to go back to that photo again. This is a photo of a female presenting person with auburn hair, a smile. She has on a black sleeveless shirt. She is holding a marker. She is standing in front of a whiteboard, and there seems to be natural light coming in that picture. So in the context that this photo was presented on Professor Jane Doe's profile, her profile webpage, the alt text for this image could be Jane Doe. On the context of an academic's offering page on a department's website where no professor is named on the webpage, the alt text could be a professor smiling in front of a whiteboard. Or in the context of an academic offering on a department's website, including courses with no professor named in the content, the alt text could be Professor Jane Doe smiling in front of the whiteboard with the caption of Professor Jane Doe teaches Intro to College Life to first-year students. So the caption is providing her name, and you can put that name in the alt text as well. If it's an article about Professor Jane Doe, then the alt text for that image could be Jane Doe. It could be Jane Doe in front of the whiteboard. It could be Professor Jane Doe in front of the whiteboard. These are things to think about based on the context of what the alternative text could include. She is smiling. She is holding a marker. There is a whiteboard there. Her gender. Unless it's stated, don't assume. She has fair skin, she has auburn hair, she has a black shirt on, and there's natural light. So the context helps you, the content that the image is with helps you build that alternative text and what you can include and what you should exclude from that information. Assistive technology will read the alt text and identify it as a graphic or image depending upon the tool. Some tools say graphic, some tools say image, some tools identify it at the beginning, some tools identify it at the end. So we have a picture of a single sprout in bright sunshine and dark soil. The image without the alt text says nothing, or it might say the file name. I've looked at lots of media libraries, and I have to say that the file names are not descriptive enough and most likely include a lot of numbers and random letters. That's not going to provide the users with any information. If the alt text is Sprout, the assistive technology could say Sprout Graphic or Graphic Sprout. It could say Sprout Image or Image Sprout. Despite there being an alt text there, that might not be descriptive enough for how this image is being used on the page. Accessibility checkers are very limited. About 35% of accessibility issues are caught by accessibility checkers. Manual checks are used to catch the rest of the accessibility issues. A manual check of alt text is needed to determine if it is providing equal information to all. Accessibility checkers for alt text can test if the image has a place for alt text, if an image has an alt text, if the image is linked. There's some bonus checks that checkers might check, that if the image's alt text is the same as another images on that web page, or if the alternative text is too long, which tends to be capped at 100 characters. Alt text and equal experience accessibility checkers cannot check to see if the alt text provides an equal experience. This falls under the manual checks. Does the image need an alt text? Is the alt text appropriate for the content? Is it descriptive enough? Is the information missing from the alt text? Or is the alt text the link destination? And this is for linked images. Some best practices is to have an alt text, no matter what. Understand the context and how that image is being used. Be descriptive and write complete sentences with a period. It is the best practice to write an alt text is to better have an alt text and provide the information to everyone. Content is everything. Understanding the content and how the image supports that information. You want to ask yourself, how is the image being used? What information is the image providing or supporting? What is the image's purpose? Using these questions can help guide you to write that alt text. Best practice is to be descriptive. Be descriptive but concise. From succinct to verbose, fall in the middle. Here is an example of the alt text for this image is an illustration of the three bears with a blonde child sleeping in the bed. Caption, channel Goldilocks for the three bears from the Three Bears children's story, write just the right amount for the alt text. Write incomplete sentences to include a period at the end. Make the alt text make sense within the context of the whole page. Avoid keyword stuffing, vague description, or incomplete sentences. The assistive technology will pause because of the period. If there isn't a period there, the assistive technology will just continue on reading and not have a breath at all between the alt text and whatever text comes afterwards. So we've talked about the alt text, how it's writing alt text is an art, not a science, providing equal experience. The context is everything, how the image is being used on the page and the information on the page, accessibility checkers, and best practices. Are there any questions so far? Completely gone through this very fast.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Is the equal experience, that word equal is kind of problematic? Is that used because it's in the law, or I mean, because it's never going to be an equal experience to looking at a visual graphic. So why don't they use like equivalent or comparable?
Equivalent would be a good substitute for that, if that helps you. We want to make sure we're not providing information to some users and not to others.
But you understand that it's never going to be equal. So I'm just wondering why they use that language.
I am using that language.
Oh, okay. It's not in the law or anything.
I have not memorized Washington state laws or the federal policy, but it should be you are providing the same information that's in the image as provided in the alt text. And how it relates to the context. Remember, it's subjective, it's an art, it's not a science. But if you are missing information, and I have an example of missing information in here, in the next section, then you are not providing people with equivalent, equal experience. On our accessibility checkers on the digital accessibility website, there are testing tools. There's a page there. There's a way for web pages in there that you can use. And then other tools are available with the products such as Microsoft Office products. We're going to go into the types of images. We have decorative images, linked images, logos, alt text and captions, complex images, which are images with text, or flyers, charts, diagrams, graphs, and maps, and images with motion and social media. For decorative images, it is the author's responsibility to determine if the image is decorative or not. There is not a tool to determine that. This is a filigree that's used as a horizontal rule, which would be considered a decorative. It does not provide additional information on this page. However, if I was writing an article about decorative images, I would put that this has the description of this image. Decorative images are purely ornamental and serve no purpose. They can be borders and spacers, scrolls, filigrees, and horizontal rule lines. Determining whether it's an decorative image or not, images are often used on a page to break up the text. Decorative images do not support or represent the information you are trying to convey. If images are similar to content to the information on the page, they are not decorative. Alt text is needed for images on the page that are similar to or represent the content. To provide the alt text or not, in the context of an article about Abraham Lincoln, does this image of Abraham Lincoln need alt text or not? If you notice that this is a photograph of Abraham Lincoln, it has also been colorized as well. So in the context, are these details important? Do you need to include that in the alt text? If the image provides any sort of connection to the content, then I would provide an alternative text. And now I have 5 images of Abraham Lincoln. The black and white version of a photograph of Abraham Lincoln, that same image colorized, what looks to be a damaged slot film of a photograph for Abraham Lincoln, a painting portrait of Abraham Lincoln, and then a sculpture of Abraham Lincoln. Are these details important to how that image is being used on the page and needs to be included in the alternative text? Linked images, the alt text for these needs to be the destination or purpose. The alt text for linked text tends to be more succinct than a description of the image. The destination refers to the web page you are linking to. The purpose refers to what the link will do. For example, if we have a linked logo that on a web page, the link should be the web page or destination. This Washington State University logo, the link would be to Washington State University's homepage, and the alt text would be Washington State University. Another example is that same professor, Jane Doe, that we're linking to her profile webpage. The alt text would be Jane Doe's profile. I provide caution just linking images. Not everyone will know that that image is linked. It is better to wrap it around with some text so that the text provides indication that it is linked. If you are using a small screen, touch screen, you would not have any indication, such as a mouse rolling over that image, that changes the how the mouse looks, or a screen reader reading over that and indicating that it is linked. So on those touch screens, those kinds of links tend not to be identified. And so it is better to wrap images with text, such as in this example of a link to Jane Doe's profile. An example of an image with purpose is a download icon that is linking to a PDF. The alt text would be download. And this open into a new window icon is provided with the link text. The link text and the image are wrapped together in the link, where the alternative text for the icon is open in a new window. For logos, when do you need to include logo with the alt text? The alt text for a logo is usually just the name of the logo. More often than not, you do not need to include logo in the alt text. Assistive technology already identifies it as a graphic or image. Again, that example of Washington State University logo, the alternative text would be Washington State University. The alt text for a link logo is the destination. Please make sure the destination is the text that is included in the image. This example again of Washington State University, the link goes to wsu.edu. The alternative text would be Washington State University. Make sure you're not linking that to something else. You're not sending them to apply. That link to that alternative text of Washington State University would not be appropriate. The image with the words in it would not imply that it is going to the application. Logo names as alternative text, whether it is linked or not. So we have a World Wide Web Consortium W3C logos. Whether it is linked to the organization, the alt text would be the same. Or if it is just displayed without being linked, the alternatives would be the same. World Wide Web Consortium W3C. Do you add a logo to the alt text? Also depends upon the context. For example, if you have a list of sponsors and you're using images to list those sponsors, the alternative text for these would just be their name. You would not need to be including their alternative. You would not need to be including logo in the alternative text. However, if you are in the context of a list of logos to download, including logo in that alternative text would be appropriate. And then alt text and caption. Note that a caption is not the alt text. A caption is not the same as the alt text. A caption is information you provide for all to know. A reminder that the alt text is a description of the image and the caption supplements the information that everyone receives. Here's an example of a penguin standing on a rock. The context of this image is an article about polar bears, and the alternative text is a lone penguin standing on a rock. The caption is not repeating that information. The caption is providing, despite all images of polar bears and penguins together, polar bears and penguins do not live in the same region. So the alt text is giving the same information that people that can see the image receive, and the alt text is providing, or the caption is providing information to all users. Here is an example of another image with in the context of a commencement news article. The alternative text is 2 smiling students in cap and gowns at a commencement ceremony. The caption is Jane Doe and Sally Smith sharing a hug during the Johnson College commencement. Now we'll go on to complex images. Complex images are images with text, flyers, charts, graphs, diagrams, maps. Complex images are images that need more than the alt text to provide all the information in that image. So you're providing alt text and additional text. complex images might need additional space to provide all the details from the image. This expanded alt text provides an overview for the image and the location of that additional detail. That additional detail may be in the caption, in an accordion below the image, or linked in the caption to another location on the page, or in the following text. Images with text provide all the content in the image as the alt text and additional details if necessary. So here we have a screen capture from the National Park Services. The alt text includes all that information in there. A screenshot of a tweet from the National Park Service with the text, "If you encounter a bear in the woods, stay calm. Identify yourself by making noise so the bear knows you are a human. We recommend using your voice. Waving and showing off your opposable thumbs means nothing to a bear." In that situation, the additional details is not needed. We've provided all that information in the alt text for that image. Flyers are often found without alt text. You must provide all the content that is in this image as text on the web page. If necessary, provide the flyer as a download, as an accessible download. This is a lot of information to include in the alt text. We have about 7 events happening. You can bring your pet along. It's giving you the date and the time and the location. It's also providing all of the sponsors. It is about the size that would be used on a social media post, yet all the information is provided only in this image. All this information needs to be included as text that is not trapped within that image. Charts and graphs must have alternative text with additional details due to all the information in the image, from the image. For example, this pie chart of search engine market share, the alternative text would be a pie chart showing the search engine market share. See additional details in the caption below. And then below that image in the caption, it says that Google has 66%, Yahoo has 16%, Bing has 13%, Ask has 3%, and AOL has 2% of the search engine market share. All the information from that image is provided in that caption. The alternative text tells us what the display is, how it is presented as a pie chart, what it is showing us, and then where to find that additional information. For charts and graphs, here we have a bar and line graph for the average rainfall. The alternative text is the annual rainfall for Quebec, including average rainfall days and precipitation for each month of the year. See additional details below. And below that image in the caption is a link to the additional details. And that would send you to a chart that includes all that information that was presented as a chart in a table for the average rainfall of Quebec, including the months of the year, the rainy days, and the precipitation. Diagrams must have text with additional details due to all that information in the alternative text. Information needed in the alternative text. Oftentimes, the additional details are included in the text that follows that image. So we have a diagram of the human heart, and the alternative text says a diagram of the human heart. See the details of the in following text. The following text is going to describe the details of that vein, valves, atriums, ventricles, and the flow of blood. It's going to, the following text in the context of that page is going to be talking about that image and describing all the information there. Maps must have alt text with additional details due to all the information in the information. Details of the map can be very complex. It is important to determine the purpose of the map to help determine the best way for everyone to get the information. We have a walking path from a parking lot to a library in this example. The alt text is the walking path from the West Park parking lot to the Briggs Library. Detailed walking directions to the Briggs Library follows. And below that image is an accordion that gives the heading of walking directions to the Briggs Library. Opening up that accordion, you would provide information from the northeast corner of the west parking lot, take the path east, past the science building, then north between the Stewart and Multi-Ethics Resource Center, turn left on the path to following Cougar Circle, like that. So you are providing all that information in that map as text. Images with motion. Images with motion, GIFs usually, must be avoided when there isn't a way to pause or stop the animation. Some social media platforms provide a way to pause the button for those embedded images with motion. Also note that an image with motion or video with flashing content can trigger a seizure. Flashing content is defined as 3 or more flashes in 1 second. Flashing content does not meet accessibility requirements. Avoid flashing content in animated GIFs and videos. So unless the platform or program you are using allows you to have a pause or stop button, do not use images with motion. This is different from videos. This is images such as GIFs that cycle through their animation. They usually do not provide a pause or stop button. Social media can be a more visual depiction of information than the content-wise. Not all social media platforms support alt text. Some social media platforms support more characters for alt text. Social media platforms should have a detailed alt text since there isn't as much surrounding content to provide context for that information. Here we have a post from the National Park Service. They are including the alternative text within that post. It starts out with a week. When your week was like wrestling a porcupine in a windstorm, but you finally made it to Friday. It goes on to describe that. And then the image description is at the end, a bear sitting back at the Denali National Park and preserve in Alaska. And then it gives the national park person that took that photograph, and there is a bear reclining in some dirt in that social media post. So the alternative text is included with the post. Another way to do that is to use the program and enter the alternative text as you upload the image. So here we have the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services for Columbia Pacific Northwest, and they are providing the alternative text within the program. And I'm using a social visual alt text to Chrome add-on that displays what alternative text has been provided for that image, which is mostly gray duck with white head coloring and black tail feathers moves in water. Here's another example of, this is the complex image that provides a lot of detail. And they are using the social media platform to put that for the alternative text. It is about the bird migration that is happening. It is a heat map of the United States. And the alternative text is map of lower 48 states uses orange, pink, and purples to indicate bird migration intensity. With much of America's South colored in orange and pinks moving up through the West Coast and the Midwest. Big text on the screen reads night of April 13th, 2025, and 135 birds predicted. There's a lot more text in this image than what they provided. I have other recommendations and hope that the Birdcast provides more details on their webpage where this information is coming from. And I would link to that. If that is not provided, if the Birdcast does not have that information, then I would provide more detail in the description or in the description, in the post, as well as in the alternative text for this. It also doesn't define what orange, pink, and purple means on the legend they have up there from none, low, medium, and high. So I don't know what orange, pink, and purple means and whether I'm in a good area or not. This is also the Columbia Pacific Northwest region, which includes Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Hawaii. And there isn't any indication of where information about that area level of migration that is in the photograph. Here's an example of a video description, but it's in the comments. A nice feature to have, although being in the comments, it can be difficult for people navigating through social media to find that video description in there. I do not recommend providing alternative text, or in this case, video description in the comments to put it in the post. Or in the field available for alternative text for images. Because finding it in the comments can be difficult. This social media channel seems to pin them at the top, but not all social media channels do that. Any questions about decorative images, linked images, logos, alternative text, captions, complex images? Images with motion or social media. It's a lot of information. This will eventually be turned into a webpage on the digital accessibility website.
No questions for Lesa? It was really helpful.
I do have one question.
Mhm.
So we've been asked, or my professional society is asking us to provide alt text for all of the figures in when we submit a manuscript for the journal. And it, based on your presentation, it looks like if you provide a bar graph of something, you would have to then go back and put in the alt text the means that each of those bars represented, because of course it's a representation of relative numbers. Should we even do bar graphs, or should it be linked to a table, or which can be read? How are we doing this?
So I would give them all the information and let them help figure out what needs to be used. So you provide the chart and also provide the table for them. They have specific instructions. I would confer with them about how they want that information, but providing that information that's in your chart as a table would be helpful. And I'm sure you're using that table to build the chart.
Yes.
So that's an easy way to provide it. It's when you get that chart as an image and then you have to recreate it yourself, which is what I did for all of those examples. And which I found a lot of web authors on our websites have to do as well. So so the question is, how do you alt text for an image that is pointing to a specific place in the graphic And how the alt text. Oh, yes. So, okay, so I'm assuming you have supporting text that provides information about the steps you are taking through this? Is that
Yeah. Yeah. So and I can like send a copy. Basically, I'm building a guide to explain to our county staff how to use the software that we use for our enrollment system. And I had originally built it with like, here's a screenshot and here's where that button is on the screen. And I mean, like, how do you alt text a physical place on a graph? That's where I'm stuck at the moment.
so it match up the steps that they are taking with words with what you are displaying in the image as well.
Okay.
So it's hard to go through this without a concrete example of that, but you might want to, from what you have just said, you might want to make your text information more descriptive of where they find that, where they need to go, and that image is supplemental, and then you can have that brief alt text that says where that, I'm assuming the mouse is being pointed there, or that area is being highlighted. You would say that the submit button is highlighted with a red box next to something or other, giving some identification, which is also mimicked in the text that is presented with it.
Okay, that's helpful. So like a lot of times I'll say like the submit button is in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. And on the graphic, I would outline it in a red box so that our sighted users can see it. But I didn't know how to explain that to our
Yes.
non-sighted potential users of like, because when they're using like because I practice with voiceover on my computer to make sure that things are in the right order, but bottom right hand corner of the screen doesn't mean anything. It's what order does the screen reader go through, and so I was not sure exactly how to do that.
If you can identify any headings and use that within the image, that can help people navigate to that section, because they can use the heading list to get to that spot quickly
Okay.
and get down to there, or they know if they haven't gotten to that section because they haven't hit that heading yet. Any other identifying markers that can be used to get to that place, because they necessarily won't know they've hit the bottom of the page,
Mm-hmm.
except for not being able to go further. And if you look at the bottom of our web pages right now, we have a footer there.
Mm-hmm.
So that context needs to be
Okay.
related in your instructions.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's helpful. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Again, it's art.
Yeah,
It's not science.
it's tough when you're building something with the assumption that the person reading the guide is going to be looking at the screen that you're talking about, but then trying to do it for our non-sighted folks is very hard, very difficult.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have about 15 minutes left. Any additional questions for Lesa?
Again, accessibility checkers will only check if you have an alt text or not have an alt text, whether it's a linked image or not. The alt text is an art, not a science. And everyone will come up with a different opinion.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.